You ever seen a little kid get dragged out of her own house right after burying her father, like the world didn't even give her a day to grieve? That's what happened to 6-year-old Emma Collins, still clutching the worn teddy bear her mom had given her before she died in a car accident. The funeral hadn't even ended when her stepmother Karen and her so-called uncle, Robert, yanked her into the yard, dumped a bucket of cold water over her head, and called it washing away bad luck. Neighbors peeked from their windows, then slammed them shut. Not one of them stepped in. That image of a shivering little girl, trembling in the yard, should have been enough to haunt anyone. And it did, because that's the exact moment Ethan Collins drove up. Now Ethan wasn't some random Good Samaritan. He was Richard Collins' brother, a self-made millionaire with his face splashed across Forbes and the Times, the kind of man people whispered about, but never really knew. Cold in business, secretive in life. But under all of that, he carried scars from a childhood abandoned by his own parents. Maybe that's why when he saw Emma soaked through and shaking, something cracked wide open inside him. He took off his coat, wrapped it around her, and said the one sentence that shifted everything. "She's coming with me." Karen tried to play her part, crocodile tears rolling as she mumbled about teaching the girl respect. Robert laughed in his face, mocking Ethan for barging in late to the funeral, calling him a meddler. But Ethan wasn't listening. Emma tugged at his sleeve, her voice barely audible. "Uncle, please don't let them throw me out again." And that was it. Ethan scooped her up, walked past both of them, and shut the gate behind him. From that moment, this wasn't just a family feud. It was a war. Inside his penthouse later that night, Ethan tried to do the simple things. Feed her chicken soup, hand her a blanket, let her know she didn't have to ask permission to exist anymore. But Emma was broken down so far she pushed the bowl back, whispering that she didn't want to be yelled at. Imagine hearing that from a child who should have been laughing, running, spilling juice on the couch. Ethan looked at her and saw himself, a boy once hiding under a table from his stepfather's fists. He swore then. Richard had saved him once, and now it was his turn to pay that debt forward. But here's the twist: the teddy bear. That same bear Robert stomped on in the yard. Inside it, Emma found a hidden seam with a USB drive tucked deep in the stuffing. On it was Richard's voice, shaky but clear, asking what medicine he was being forced to take. And Karen's whisper answered like poison itself. "Let him drink more. Let him die already." Right there, it was no longer just neglect. It was murder. Emma sobbed. Ethan clenched the table, and both of them realized Richard had left behind the truth, trusting someone would protect his daughter enough to uncover it. Ethan moved quick. He brought in Anderson, a seasoned attorney who dealt in finance and family law, the kind of man who never raised his voice but made every word count. Witnesses stepped forward: Dorothy, the neighbor who'd seen the bucket of water thrown, and Frank, the homeless man out back who'd watched Emma stumble in the dirt. Both of them terrified, both of them attacked when they dared to speak, but Ethan stood firm. If they stayed silent, Emma would never be free. Piece by piece, the case built itself. Contract forgeries signed while Richard was sedated, hospital logs proving he couldn't have lifted a pen, and car data showing Emma's mother's accident wasn't an accident at all. Robert had tampered with the vehicle's electronic systems. Every new discovery was like peeling back a rotten layer of truth. Karen fought back in the press, painting Ethan as a greedy kidnapper after Emma's shares. Headlines screamed, cameras clicked, crocodile tears flowed again. But Ethan didn't flinch. He told Emma noise wasn't truth and walked her hand in hand into court. The witnesses spoke, the audio played. Richard's weary voice filled the room, followed by Karen's chilling whisper. Reporters gasped. Robert exploded. The judge hammered his gavel for order. And then came the words that broke the dam. Emergency protection granted. Karen and Robert detained for poisoning, fraud, and abuse. The wicked, for once, were let out in cuffs while the innocent clung to hope. But the story didn't end there. Emma had a long road back to trust. Nights of crying into her teddy bear, mornings of asking if Ethan would leave her too. Slowly, the house filled with life again, not just hers, but the community's. Dorothy sewed curtains, Frank built shelves, Emily the librarian brought books, Linda from the cafe fed them all with sandwiches and cocoa. Anderson, the quiet anchor, kept the legal wheels turning. They named it the Harbor Light Center, a place for children who needed hope. And in that house, Emma found her voice again. She tied ribbons on signs, read books to other kids, even stood up one day and asked Ethan the hardest question: "Do you want to be my dad? Or is this just about paying back my father?" Ethan knelt, eyes wet, and told her, "At first it was for him. But now it's because of you. My heart chooses you." And when the verdict finally came down, Karen and Robert sentenced heavy for everything they'd done. Emma wrapped her purple scarf tight, stood beside Ethan, and whispered one word that cracked his heart wide open: "Dad." That's the cinematic ending we all crave. The villain punished, the child safe, the man scarred by his own past finally becoming the father he once needed. But life doesn't tie itself in neat bows. Justice came this time, sure, but you and I both know it doesn't always. And the question lingers: how many Emmas are still out there, voices unheard, waiting for someone to step up? So let me ask you, if Emma had been standing in your yard that night, trembling, clutching a ruined teddy bear, what would you have done? Would you have turned away like the neighbors, or stepped forward like Ethan? Drop your thoughts below, share what you believe justice should look like, because sometimes even a single comment can be the light someone else needs in their darkness. The thing about peace is it never really lasts. You know what I mean? Just when the air feels light again, something darker always creeps back in. Ethan had just started to believe Emma might finally breathe easy when new headlines hit. Karen out on bail pending appeal, her lawyers clawing through every loophole they could find, Robert whispering to anyone who would listen that Ethan was the real thief. And Emma, even with her purple scarf wrapped tight, caught the whispers at school. Kids repeating what their parents read online, calling her cursed, saying her dad was poisoned because of her. She came home one afternoon with her eyes burning, slammed her teddy bear down on the table, and said, "Why won't it stop?" Ethan sat there for a long moment. No clever words left in his chest, just the raw truth. Because people with money and malice don't give up easy. But then he told her the other truth, the one he believed more, that once you drag the light out of the dark, it can't be shoved back in so easily. Still, he knew he needed more than comforting words. He needed iron. So he doubled down. More lawyers, more investigators, more security around the center. The Harbor Light wasn't just a home anymore. It had become a symbol, and symbols draw fire. That's when a new figure walked in, Detective Maria Lopez, mid-40s, sharp suit, sharper eyes, the kind of woman who'd seen too many cover-ups rot from the inside. She introduced herself not with pleasantries, but with a file, dropped heavy on Ethan's desk. Surveillance stills of Robert meeting with a hospital administrator months earlier, payments funneled through shell companies. She said flat out, they didn't just poison Richard. They bought silence. Ethan clenched the file so tight his knuckles turned white, and Emma, standing in the doorway, heard enough to whisper, "So my dad never stood a chance." Lopez crouched, looked her dead in the eyes, and said, "Your dad fought as long as he could. Now we fight for him." And that cracked something open in Emma, her fear turning to a quiet rage, the kind that makes a child older than her years. She started asking questions Ethan wasn't ready to answer, pulling old photos, demanding to see her dad's handwriting so she could compare it to the forged documents. One night, she spread them all across the dining table, tracing the loops of his signature with trembling fingers, then pointed at the fake one and said, "This isn't him. He always made his hair curl." They didn't even know that. It was the smallest detail, but it felt like her father was still speaking through her, correcting the lie. But the more they uncovered, the more dangerous it got. A rock through the center's window in the middle of the night. A car tailing them after school pickup. Even Frank was jumped again, left with bruises but muttering through broken teeth that he'd never shut up. Ethan started carrying himself differently. Straighter, colder, the strategist everyone knew from Wall Street now pointed like a weapon at protecting a child. Then came the second twist. Karen wasn't working alone. Lopez dug deeper and found out Robert had ties to a pharmaceutical company that supplied Richard's treatments. They weren't just angling for family money. They were part of a corporate grab worth millions. Emma overheard Ethan reading documents late one night and asked, "Does that mean Dad's death was business?" Ethan froze because, yeah, that's exactly what it meant. His brother reduced to a ledger line in someone else's profit. And in that silence, Emma made a vow out loud, soft but steady. "Then I'll make sure they never forget his name." Court hearings turned nastier, cameras outside the doors every morning. Karen walked in draped in black lace, playing the grieving widow card. Robert smirked like he owned the place. But now Emma wasn't just sitting in the back row hiding. She sat beside Ethan, purple scarf on, teddy bear in her lap, eyes steady. When the judge asked if she wanted to speak again, she stood and said, "They tried to erase my dad with lies. I'm here to say he was real, and he loved me." The courtroom went still, because sometimes the smallest voice cuts the deepest. The case widened into fraud and corporate conspiracy, arrests piling up beyond just Karen and Robert. The Harbor Light Center became front-page news, first painted as a scandal, then slowly shifting into a story about resilience, about a child's voice pulling truth out of corruption. Strangers sent letters, kids showed up after school asking to study there. Reporters tried to catch a glimpse of the girl with the purple scarf. And through it all, Ethan stayed steady. Though at night when the lights went out, he'd sit by the window, eyes red, whispering to Richard, "I'm doing it, brother. I'm keeping her safe." But here's the thing, justice doesn't heal everything. One night Emma asked if she could sleep in his room because she still dreamed of water crashing over her head. Ethan let her, and as she curled up, she whispered, "If I forget their faces, will that mean they can't hurt me anymore?" He couldn't answer, not really. He just pulled the blanket tighter and said, "It means you chose peace. And that's stronger than their cruelty." So yeah, Karen and Robert faced the law. The company's rotten core got dragged into daylight. But the bigger story, the one still being written, was a girl learning not just to survive, but to believe she wasn't cursed. She wasn't a burden. She was the reason light kept burning in that house. And Ethan, scarred, cold, once abandoned himself, finally letting someone call him dad without flinching. The last image I'll leave you with, snow falling again outside the Harbor Light windows, kids laughing over cocoa, Emma standing at the porch with her scarf wrapped high, looking up at the sky and whispering, "I'm not afraid anymore." Ethan watching from the doorway, whispering back to the night, "Neither am I." But the question lingers, right? What if Ethan hadn't stopped that day? What if no one had? How many Emmas are out there waiting for a door to open, waiting for one coat over their shoulders, one voice saying, "She's coming with me"? And the harder question, if you saw it, would you?